Chapter 90. Mole, you are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Outside the inn was a chaotic world, and inside, no one was there. Qin Chen walked outside with the Glock 34. In fact, Yi Wan was right. Although Qin Chen was careful, he has never been ischemic. Just like when he arrived in prison 18, he never asked for forgiveness, even in the darkroom and being waterboarded. With his desire to survive, he would walk away from death himself. This was why Li Shutong chose him. Compared to his talent for supernatural memory, Li Shutong was naturally more interested in his character. Probably because no one had been behind him, or he never missed his past, Qin Chen was always moving forward, never regretting everything. At this time, Wang Yun ran out of the room. In the hallway, she saw Qin Chen's eyes were full of confusion, but she wasn't very familiar with Qin Chen, so she didn't even recognize her at all. Qin Chen looked at her coldly. Her clothes were neat and there were no signs of abuse. Even her makeup was still there. You. Wang Yun was stunned to see Qin Chen, who was still masked. Qin Chen raised his hand and fired 4 shots. 2 missed, and the last 2 accurately hit her right leg. Then, he walked forward with no hesitation. Qin Chen suddenly discovered that he had the talent to use guns. Typically, people had to be fed a lot of ammunition to get comfortable with firing a weapon. Gun sense meant that one had to familiarize the recoil, the bursting speed, the ballistics, and the reaction. It required one's muscles to react upon the moment that the trigger was pulled. But now, Qin Chen only needed a few shots to get a good grasp of all those in his mind. So, that was why he missed the first few shots and hit the last 2 with high accuracy. Wang Yun was screaming behind him. Qin Chen, however, felt no pity for her. Many things seemed to have connected now. On September 30th, only Wang Yun came to the school in advance to invite Nan Zhenchen, while normally, she would arrive with the other 3. That whole day, Lu Dezhu, Hu Xiaoniu, Zhang Tianjin, and Bai Weiner would gather in the hallway during break times, but Wang Yun didn't walk out of the classroom at all, staying at her seat for almost the entire day. So, after Qin Chen noticed that there might be a mole among them who revealed their itinerary to the criminals, she modified the timing to coincide with tonight's action. When he asked Lu Dezhu, who proposed changing the itinerary, Lu Dezhu replied, Bai Weiner. This didn't make sense to Qin Chen at that time. Because in his memory, Wang Yun was the most suspicious one. Bai Weiner wasn't the answer he wanted. Now it seemed that something must have happened at Jiang Shui's apartment that night which caused the changes the next day. The relationship between the 4 of them also fell apart. Finally, when the criminals took away Wang Yun, and then suddenly took away Nan Zhenchen, Qin Chen had already determined his guesses. The criminals wouldn't do anything so stupid at this critical time. They just wanted to find an excuse to take Wang Yun away to exchange information. That was why they took Nan Zhenchen away right after Wang Yun. Qin Chen believed that wasn't a coincidence. So his first reaction after seeing Wang Yun in the hallway was open fire. This was Qin Chen's coldest side but was also a heated reaction. For some reason, when he thought about the corpses in the courtyard, he couldn't let this girl leave unhurt. Qin Chen didn't want to avenge anyone. After all, he didn't know the 2 Kunlun members nor the owner of the house. He was just thinking that someone had to pay for this. In a rural tourist attraction like Laojun Mountain, despite having a lot of guests, no one would be out wandering after 1 in the morning. The restaurants were all closed, leaving only the street lamps still on. But with the large commotion, the people staying at the ghost houses on the street were all woken. Students started scattering while the criminals changed into normal clothing and followed behind. 4 of them grabbed hold of Lu Dezhu, Zhang Tianjin, Hu Xiaoniu, and Bai Weiner. They used their clothes to cover their tied hands. On the road, Hu Xiaoniu said coldly, you won't get away with the 4 of us, and this has exceeded your plans. There's only one road up and down the mountain, so Kunlun probably have set up checkpoints along the way. The leader of the criminals didn't interrupt but listened with interest. Hu Xiaoniu continued, if you release us, you can go straight deeper into the mountain range. The Funyo Mountains span over 250 miles, even gods won't find you. If you bring us, we will only keep you from moving fast enough. Leave me an account number. I know you want money, and I promise I'll send enough when I get back. The leader smiled, thanks for planning all that for us, but you've overthought about it. Next, he waved his hand to signal another criminal to open a plastic bag that had a dozen pre-made Molotov cocktails. The leader then pulled out a lighter and lit a cigarette for himself before lighting the cloth on the Molotov. Throw them, he said calmly to the other criminal. The criminal threw it toward another house. Instantly the first started burning. As they walked, the criminals throw the Molotov cocktails from the plastic bags one by one, causing the entire row of houses to catch fire. Countless tourists woke up from their sleep and ran to the streets frantically. This wasn't even all they got. Looking back at Lu Dezhu, the leader smiled, honestly, I wanted to take you away, but I'm also afraid that Li Shuang would come after us at all costs. So, let's just say goodbye here. When they see you die, the tourists would start to go out of hand. The leader then said to someone behind him, 7, unload an entire magazine on him, to let these cute tourists run a little faster. But no one responded to him. The leader suddenly turned back and saw that not too far away from him, the criminal who was holding by Weiner was already in a pool of blood. Blood was gushing out from his spleen through the wound on his back. No one knew when 7 died, nor did anyone know who did it. It was as if in the misty night, another hunter was at large, and they had gone from being hunters to now being the prey. The criminal's face was cold. He then took off his silencer and pulled the trigger toward Lu Dezhu. Facing a life and death situation, Lu Dezhu suddenly burst out with great courage. He bent down and arched toward the criminal next to him. As he did so, he ran as fast as he could into the darkness while zigzagging to avoid the bullets. His speed and explosive power were incredible. The physical improvements brought by the genetic injection saved his life. The leader didn't even imagine that such a cowardly teenager would have the courage to resist. At the same time, someone also opened fire. Precisely hit the thigh of the criminal who was holding Lu Dezhu. Before the wounded criminal fell onto the ground, the hunter in the dark gave another shot that pierced his head. The leader's face darkened. He randomly shot toward the crowd of tourists a couple of times. The crisp gunfire shocked all the tourists. Seeing the victims fall, the confused tourists started running everywhere without order. The leader and another criminal quickly mixed into the crowd heading to the parking lot with Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjun. Too much had happened tonight. The perfect plan was broken apart by the sudden disturbance. They started with 8, but now, only 2 left. They had to leave immediately. Chapter 91. Another time traveler. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The blaze roared up as it devoured more than 10 inns, blown amuck by the mountain gust and spreading further away. What was supposed to be a good National Day holiday trip had turned into a dangerous farce. Even the sky was illuminated, like an afterglow drifting from within the veil of midnight. Countless tourists hastily ran out of the inns only to be greeted by a shootout, causing them to flee in frenzy. The 2 remaining thugs hid inside the crowd, ushering Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjun while rushing towards the parking lot with their heads hung low. They could always kidnap other time travelers and look for new accomplices. As long as they could leave Laojun Mountain in time, they could still make it. However, just as they reached the juncture, the thug leader abruptly turned around. He scanned past the chaotic mass, zeroing in on a young man who was also staring straight at him through the crowd. Behind the boy was the harrowing fire. Boisterous, panicked visitors surrounded his sides. But none of the mayhem was reflected in those eyes, they were only looking at him. He felt his heart beat in terror, overcame by a sudden sense of foreboding. He knew he had been marked. The other would never let him go until he killed him. The thug leader recalled the smooth and neat procession of 6 murder in a burst of biting chill. If it weren't for Hu Xiaoniu blocking the path between him and the boy, the one who died at that time could have very well been himself. Dongzi, we definitely won't be able to escape unless we kill that kid, the leader said. Make sure to wait for my signal when we get to the parking lot. As he spoke, the leader who was clad in a black trench coat actually took out his gun and shot 2 times, each bullet hitting Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjin in the abdomen, letting them slowly crumple to the ground. Brother, what are you doing? Dongzi asked in shock. That kid might know these 2 students, so let's see if they can help to buy us some time. Besides, we can't let them drag us since we're going to attack him, said the leader, leaving Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjin as he dashed to the parking lot. There were hundreds of parked buses that could serve as natural covering, like a labyrinth designed to obstruct vision. Qin Chen quietly came to Hu Xiaoniu's side. Once he confirmed the other was still breathing, he immediately dug out Hu Xiaoniu's phone to dial 120.1 emergency number for ambulance. In China there were healthcare centers around the scenic area. Although those doctors and nurses had probably never seen gunshot wounds, Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjin were both shot in the stomach, not at fatal points. They should be able to survive as long as the medical staff arrived on time. He said to Hu Xiaoniu, who was lying on the ground, I've called, the ambulance will be here soon. I'll stay here to watch over you guys. It's not a fatal injury, so don't worry, nothing bad will happen. But all of a sudden, Hu Xiaoniu struggled to rise up and pulled on Qin Chen's sleeve. His lips were pale and his voice trembled as he talked, I know you're very strong, please help me to kill those 2 thugs. Qin Chen glanced at the web-like parking lot. Before he could say anything, Hu Xiaoniu continued, you're Lu Deju's man, right? Please help me to avenge them. After this, I'll pay Lu Deju to double the number of gold bars as I did the last time. You can't let the 2 heroes from Kunlun die in vain. Don't worry about us. Qin Chen fell into a long stretch of silence. He didn't know what exactly happened in this short period of time that drove Hu Xiaoniu into such a state, disregarding even his own life to ask for help in getting revenge. He uttered in a low voice, you guys should lie down, cover your wounds, and don't move. Rest assured, they'll certainly die today. After speaking, he looked at the maze of a parking lot and then stepped forward. It was a moment of utmost danger. He was well aware that the thugs were precisely waiting for him inside. When the battlefield was a maze, whoever entered earlier had the absolute advantage. Vision, terrain, and timing. It seemed as though every element of the battle was unfavorable to Qin Chen. This time, however, Qin Chen didn't care about the gold bars. This time, he just wanted to kill. After taking a moment to think, he used both hands and feet to climb on the top of a bus. The iron roof was flimsy, but he stepped on it without making a single sound. Just as he walked to the edge, he was stunned to see a thug standing right below. The thug was struggling to raise the muzzle of his gun, it was as if his body was stuck in viscous glue. Qin Chen swiftly looked to the other side. There, a person wearing a hooded sweater and a black mask was standing in the shadows. That person stretched out an arm with an open palm facing the thug, seemingly controlling his destiny with just one hand. A time traveler. And a superhuman, on top of it. Qin Chen pondered, was this ability related to gravity? The hooded time traveler cocked her head to the east, and a female voice came from beneath the mask, this one's been cast away. The other one ran off and left him behind. I'll leave it to you. Qin Chen came to a sudden realization. The 2 thugs should have been hiding behind the bus with the intention to ambush him, but this time traveler of unknown origin unexpectedly subdued them. Due to her bizarre ability, the leader abandoned his own subordinate to make an escape. Qin Chen briefly examined her, she was about 176 centimeters tall, with a slender and well-proportioned figure. He couldn't get a clear look at her appearance because she was standing in the dark. She was tall and had her figure concealed underneath the loose sweater, so Qing Chen subconsciously took her for a man at first. He didn't expect her to be a girl with a very young voice. "What are you standing around in a daze for? The guy will slip away if you keep zoning out," said the mysterious girl. The roar of an engine could already be heard in the distance. From afar, Qing Chen saw the thug leader sitting in the driver's seat of the black van he had previously seen, slamming on the accelerator to head to the mountain road outside the scenic area. Qing Chen didn't spare any more time to think. He jumped off the roof of the bus, snatched the thug's gun, and sprinted madly. The girl kept her gaze on Qing Chen as he left, getting taken aback upon seeing his bare feet covered in blood. But the boy didn't seem to feel any pain at all. She slowly walked out of the shadows and stood beside the thug, silently peering down at him as he gradually knelt on the concrete path. The next second, her always open palm closed without warning. A scream instantly tore out of the thug. Both of his legs were pressing hard on the concrete, and the huge pressure shattered the bones in his knees. "This is to give you some retribution on behalf of those who died tonight," said the girl softly. She put her hands into her sweater pockets and walked back into the shadows. All that was left in the parking lot were the howling shrieks of the thug and his broken knees. The black van drove down the mountain road, but the thug couldn't pick up his speed because there were too many narrow twists and turns along the way. Gunshots kept coming from behind the car, and it made him terrified. The young man had excellent marksmanship. He would have still managed to land accurate hits on the car even if it had been moving at high speed. But he probably couldn't predict that in order to accommodate their Glock 34 handguns and silencers, the thugs had specially chosen subsonic bullets to reduce the sound of gunfire. This kind of bullet had no other advantage aside from the sound suppression, and with the silencer installed, its effective range was further reduced to less than 20 meters. It was only suitable for a close-range assassination attack. At this moment, the thug leader felt it fortunate that they had used subsonic bullets because he might have died otherwise. The gunshots gradually ceased. The boy seemed to have run out of bullets and could only toss away the firearm in his hand. But Qing Chen's feet never stopped moving. In the rearview mirror, the thug watched as the masked boy chased him like a lone wolf, rabidly gnashing his fangs in determination to bite him to death. Chapter 92. All settled. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the SUV, seeing that he couldn't get rid of Qing Chen, he started slowing down. He got a gun, but Qing Chen didn't. At a turn, he suddenly rolled down the car window. Just as the car started turning sideways for the turn, the criminal lifted the muzzle while in the car and accurately pulled the trigger toward Qing Chen. But the criminal didn't expect that as he started slowing down, Qing Chen pulled out another pistol from his waist and pulled the trigger at the same time he did. Qing Chen had two guns on him. He deliberately emptied a magazine and threw a gun away to pretend to the leader that he got nothing left. He was waiting for the criminal leader to slow down and attempt to kill him. The criminal panicked. He ducked as he took the shot and the muzzle deviated from its position slightly. His ears went numb as if something pierced through them. He could even smell his hair being burnt by the bullet. As the gunfire burst on the road in the middle of the night, Qing Chen was also wounded. Even with the decreased accuracy, the bullet still scratched past his shoulder and left a bloody groove on his right shoulder. Qing Chen lost his balance and fell to the ground. The momentum from running caused him to start rolling on the ground. He pursed his lips and got up again, looking coldly at the car getting further and further away. To shorten the distance between him and the car, Qing Chen started crossing the forest between the roads on bare feet. On the mountain road, Qing Chen picked up a rock bigger than his head while running. Stepping on the branches and stones, the soles of his feet gave a chilling pain. Since a while ago, his clean feet had come messy. The soles were black and muddy, and the mixture of blood and dirt made it look even more painful. However, he ignored the branches scratching his face, and the bloody groove on his shoulder. He also ignored the gravel and branches under his feet. All he could do was cast off all perceived pain with his mental will. He had to make tonight's culprit pay the price. Qin Chen ran faster and faster. When passing through the mountains, the world seemed to have become a vast chessboard. At this moment, he was no longer a chess player, but a fierce pawn who was crossing the Chu River and Han borders won the middle dividing line on the Chinese chessboard. He got nothing but bravery. The mountain road chessboard became a model in Qin Chen's mind. He carefully calculated his speed and the car's speed. Pieces of information intertwined in Qin Chen's mind. The next moment, Qin Chen ran wildly to the edge of the high mountain forest, and more than 10 meters below was the winding mountain road where the criminal leader would have to drive through. Sweat splashed across the tips of his hair like droplets of crystals. Breathe. Control. Dominate. He wasn't only a pawn who turned back but also a cannon firing toward the enemies. He didn't even look at where the SUV was. Instantly, he released the rock in his hand. The rock was thrown into the air forming a precise parabola aiming toward the road. It started rolling in the air, and, at the same time, it was gaining speed from gravity. The thug leader's pupil shrank. He slammed the brakes, but it was already too late. It almost looked like the black SUV slammed right into the rock coming from the sky. With a loud bang, the thug smashed abruptly into the driver's seat, and the SUV lost control while diving into the mountain beside the road. In the dark, no one noticed the car accident on the winding mountain road. The leader was sitting quietly in the car. His head was bleeding after bumping into the steering wheel. He looked hideous. The hood was twisted irregularly, and there was a screeching sound in the car. Something must have leaked somewhere. His gun was nowhere to be found. He slammed his shoulder onto the door to get himself out. He was planning to go down the mountain on foot. Without the car, he couldn't take the road anymore, since Kunlun people would be there before he gets down the hill. However, he suddenly saw the masked teenager appear at a bend on the winding road. The drop from where he threw the rock was over 10 meters, so he had to come down using the road. But the leader couldn't understand why the teenager was so determined to come after him even after being wounded in such a state. The next moment, the teenager gained speed, and he started running again. The leader was terrified and defeated. He had mechanical limbs on him, but he didn't have the courage to start a good fight. He wanted to run, but after just 2 steps, he lost his balance and fell to the ground. The car accident just now seemed to have affected his cerebellum, and he couldn't control his balance while walking. The leader struggled to get up, looking at the teenager who had come before him. He collected all the power he had. He stood up straight and roared, "Come at me. Don't you want to kill me? Come on." The teenager remained silent. Then, the teenager took out a switchblade and went for the criminal's neck. The criminal was startled, and his mechanical arm quickly crossed in front of him to block. However, in the blink of an eye, the blade in the teenager's hand has turned in the air, and the sharp blade rubbed past the mechanical limb, bringing out a stream of sparks. The leader of the gangster was inexplicably surprised. It was so fast that he didn't even have time to react. The teenager retreated and lowered his waist. The blade then went for the criminal's legs. This time, the leader was even faster. The powerful mechanical limbs came before the blade. As long as he could grab the teenager's wrist and crush it, the victory would be his. But the criminal saw another change in direction from the blade. Another fake attack. Just as he was about to grab onto the teenager's wrist, the teenager appeared to his left. It was wide open. Before he could turn back, the switchblade was firmly nailed into this spleen. At that moment, the criminal felt that he returned to the battlefield in Southeast Asia, facing a masterful dagger wielder. From the beginning, he couldn't even get near the teenager's body. Even when he was hurt and got a mild concussion, this was still unbelievable. The teenager was like a wind. Impossible to grasp or touch. But he was able to kill. The teenager seemed to be executing a pre-established plan, and every step was under his expectation. This was an art. The teenager pulled out the switchblade and was about to leave. The criminal felt that his blood was drained from his body. Looking at the teenager's back, he felt that he was a nobody. The person who killed him didn't even want to waste another second on him. It turned out that the teenager just wanted to confirm his death, leaving no chance of survival. For what? The criminal asked. He was confused. Qin Chen thought for a while and said, "I promised others that you will die tonight." After that, the boy turned around and was about to leave. Suddenly, a phone rang in the criminal's pocket. The teenager paused and was puzzled. Chapter 93. A New Beginning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At 2 o'clock in the morning, with all of his accomplices already dead, who would call the thug leader at this time? He walked to the car, fished out the phone from the thug's pocket, and pressed the answer button. The number was displayed as unknown caller. Even with the scarf covering his face, Qin Chen had been using his finger to block the camera the instant he took out the phone to prevent anyone from capturing his face through it. The person on the other side of the call did not talk, as if waiting for the thug leader to open his mouth. But Qin Chen maintained his silence. The caller at least reacted with a light chuckle, "They're already dead, right?" Qin Chen didn't speak. The voice on the phone continued to laugh, "Since they're all dead, how about we talk?" Without hesitation, Qin Chen used the thug leader's coat to wipe off his fingerprints from the phone and replace them with the thug's own. After stuffing the phone back into the corpse's trench coat, he slowly walked off into the night. He was musing, these were just 7 thugs who couldn't even afford biomimetic skin, but they had almost done him in. At this moment, Qin Chen realized that his wonderful life seemed to have just begun. The fire on Laojun Mountain was finally brought under control in the early morning. The entire street of lodgings had turned into a stretch of scorched ruins. Some tourists were crying in the middle of the road, others were vacantly squatting on the side, looking thoroughly at a loss. 7 black off-road cars galloped up the mountain. They made a brief stop at the site of the car crash and left a group of people to conduct detailed search on the mountain road while the rest continued to go up. Lu Yuan arrived at the gate of Yunshang Inn. Nobody knew what went on in his mind as he looked at the blackened building. In front of him were the corpses of 2 Kunlun members, as well as several of the thugs. Lu Yuan refrained himself from looking at his comrades and squatted down to give the thugs a preliminary autopsy. There were 8 thugs in total. The one on the mountain road should be the ringleader, and his spleen was stabbed in the midst of his escape. Another set of footprints was discovered, but what's odd is that the murderer didn't seem to be wearing shoes. We've extracted the blood from the footprints to be used for DNA comparison. 7 of the thugs were nearby the inn. One had his knees crushed by someone in the parking lot, but he's still alive. The attacker clearly had the ability to kill him but didn't do it, as if to especially leave him behind for us to interrogate. Of the other 6 thugs, 2 of the bodies were burned to a crisp in the fire, 1 was shot to death, and the remaining 3 all died from pierced spleen. The technique was extremely precise, so there's a high probability that it was done by a professional killer. Team leader Lu, the student, said if it wasn't for Wrench and Hawthorne sacrificing their lives to open the gate, all 40 plus of them wouldn't have been able to escape. They truly didn't disgrace Kunlun. Lu Yuan silently listened to his subordinate's report, his nose turning sore as the mountain wind blew. The gale whimpered and wailed, swiping up the traces of burnt ashes. Lu Yuan wiped his nose. Now was not the time to be sentimental. He crouched to inspect the wounds on the thugs, and then checked out the places where his subordinates found the corpses. The first body was discovered next to Yunshang Inn, but the murder definitely took place at a different location. On the road outside the door, Kunlun members had found bloodstains as well as drag marks. Taking advantage of the darkness at night, someone should have killed him on the road and then moved his body to the yard next door. The fire burned the building, but it didn't spread to the yard, said Lu Yuan. He was now looking at the wounds and feeling increasingly more astonished as he continued observing. The analysis given by his subordinate was correct. these few thugs were killed in one blow. Moreover, regardless of whether the attack was made from the back or the front, the tip of the knife accurately pierced all of their spleens. How strange, why is it only the spleen? Lu Yuan was a little puzzled. Is it some kind of special fixation or habit? He followed the marked spot and walked all the way to the back of the yard. This should be the next crime scene, where the killer murdered the second thug and then entered the yard. Lu Yuan asked, "How are those students?" "They are seriously injured. Two of them, named Hu Xiaonyo and Zhang Tianjin, were shot in the abdomen by the thugs. Fortunately, their vital spots were not hit. They've been sent down the mountain to receive surgery, and their lives will definitely be saved. The third one is called Wang Yun, but this girl's injuries are very strange. According to her, a masked thug shot both of her legs, and a student named Nan Gingchen ultimately dragged her out of the inn. If not for that, she would have been burned to death." Lu Yuan frowned, masked. "Yes," nodded his subordinate, "I suspect this person is not one of the thugs, but instead the killer who took them down. There's no need to suspect, it must be him. You pay attention to this Wang Yun, there's something wrong with her. The person who helped us kill the thugs wouldn't shoot her twice for no reason," said Lu Yuan. "That's right, why was that Nan Gingchen inside of the inn?" "It said that the thugs took him inside to assault him," his subordinate explained, "but from what I can see, his clothing is still neat. It doesn't look like anything bad has happened. Then he should have seen the killer. Maybe the killer saved him along the way," Lu Yuan deduced. "Did you get anything from him?" "He said the killer should be around 176 centimeters tall, barefoot, and had slight crow's feet at the corners of his eyes, like a man in his 30s. Lu Yuan nodded. "Then let's do a search according to this description for the time being. Nan Gingchen is our first witness, his testimony is the most reliable." Everyone returned to the front door, where the bodies were placed. Lu Yuan looked at the dilapidated street and sank into thought. 7 of the 8 thugs died, with the only survivor was kneeling in the parking lot. One was shot, another one was killed by the Kunlun members, and the remaining 4 died of a ruptured spleen. That is to say, the assailant carried out 4 attacks and succeeded each time. This kind of person was very dangerous, but Lu Yuan no longer wished to track him down, because he was the one who avenged his teammates. On their chase, the Kunlun members found countless bloody footprints. It was difficult for him to imagine what kind of willpower the killer had, to take down the criminals one by one with his staunchness. As he glanced at the corpses, Lu Yuan suddenly discovered a new detail. The thug at the entrance was the only one lacking a walkie-talkie, he should have been the first to die. No other device was found at the scene, so that lost walkie-talkie should still be with the killer. The next moment, Lu Yuan quickly picked up the walkie-talkie from the body of another thug, took a deep breath, and pressed the connect button. "Hello, I'm Lu Yuan from Kunlun." However, there was no one to answer him in the midst of the mountain wind. Chapter 94. Take care, you are listening at novelfull.audio. On Laojun Mountain, in a guest house. The radio on the table suddenly sounded, "Hello, this is Lu Yuan from Kunlun." But he was ignored. Qin Chen just let the radio sit there quietly. At this very moment, Qin Chen was lying on a white bed, biting on a towel, and his face was pale. At the end of the bed, Jiang Shui took a bottle of iodine in a bag of cotton swabs that she bought this morning and cleaned the wounds on Qin Chen's feet and legs with tears in his legs. Tiny wood thorns, glass shards, dirt. Jiang Shui carefully cleaned them away bit by bit. Bean-sized sweat beads rolled down from Qin Chen's forehead, and Li Tongyun, sitting beside him, was constantly wiping sweat for him. The little girl was crying as well. They weren't scared but were distressed for Qin Chen. The teenager used up the last bit of strength he had to get back to the inn last night. In order to prevent people from finding him based on the clues of his bare feet, he even reluctantly put on his shoes and found another guest house to live in. Just as he entered the room, he fainted. Exhaustion, fear, and panic after the first killing as well as the backlash of the adrenaline rush all poured into his body. He was using breathing techniques throughout the battle. After the battle, a huge amount of endorphins were secreted from the pituitary gland, which made him temporarily forget the pain. But as Jiang Shui was cleaning his wounds this morning, he woke up again. At first, Jiang Shui also wanted Qing Chen to rest for a little longer, but this wound must be dealt with quickly. Why? Just to save a group of people who weren't your friends nor family. Jiang Shui wiped her tears as she said, "Look at the groove on your shoulder. If the bullet was shot a little lower, it would have shattered your shoulder blade." Qing Chen didn't speak, just endured the pain silently. In fact, even though his injury looked scary, he knew that they were all wounds on the surface and would heal soon. In particular, he used the breathing technique throughout the battle, and the lost physical strength gradually recovered in the early morning. After using the breathing technique this whole time and experiencing great trauma, Qing Chen felt that the qi in his body had gotten a little stronger. It was only first size before, and now it was a fist and a half. Moreover, his body seemed to be transforming. Even the bones seemed to be crackling slightly behind the sore body. Am I about to open a genetic lock? Probably not yet. After 3 hours, Jiang Shui finally made sure that she had cleaned up the wound on Qing Chen's feet. She said to Qing Chen, "You can sleep for a while, and I'll use the kitchen to make you something to eat." "Thank you, Aunt Jiang Shui," Qing Chen said weakly. Li Tongyun, who was beside them, said, "Brother Qing Chen, when you came back in the early morning, you almost scared us to death, and we thought you would have died." Qing Chen didn't say anything. The girl continued, "My mom then checked your injuries, and was relieved to find that only your feet and right shoulder were wounded severely. Don't do that next time, please. If you were to leave us, I'd be very scared." Qing Chen smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." After Jiang Shui left, Li Tongyun said in a low voice, "Brother Qing Chen, I probably guessed your identity, but it's a little different from the information I had before, so I have to make sure." Qing Chen was stunned for a moment as if something had been discovered by the little girl while he was in a coma. But it didn't matter, he didn't really mind that the little girl knew his identity. He was just a little curious, "Why are you so persistent in wanting to find me in the inner world?" But Li Tongyun said, "I can't tell my mom about me being a time traveler, and you aren't beside me either. Sleeping alone in that giant mansion at night is terrifying. If I can find you, I won't be scared anymore. Brother Qing Chen, do you know that I'm all alone in the inner world?" Qing Chen thought for a while and said, "Are you trying to sell me your pity?" "Boring," said Li Tongyun angrily. "Did you find any new friends in the inner world?" asked Qing Chen curiously. "I have an elder brother and an elder sister who treated me very well. Li family's grandpa was also very kind to me, but the butler told me that my sister and my grandpa were truly good to me, while my brother, Li Xiuqi, had other motives in mind." Li Tongyun murmured, "The Li Corporation seems to be very complicated, but the old grandpa is in poor health. Many people are discussing what will happen after he leaves." Qing Chen thought, her brother, sister, and grandfather were probably talking about the direct descendants of the Li family. He heard from Li Shutong that the family head was over 163 years old. His health was so poor that even the anti-aging drugs no longer work, and his cell reproduction had reached its limit. The head of the Kashima family should be the eldest, at 221 years old, but the way the head extended his life did not seem to be very respectable. Qing Chen didn't want to think about it for the time being. He turned to look at his shoulder, where the new gauze had been tied. All of this reminded him that the battle was over. But there seems to be something that hasn't happened yet. "Xiao Yun, can you get me a pen and a piece of paper?" asked Qing Chen. "I got some in my backpack," said Li Tongyun. Even on a holiday break, she still had to carry her school bag and bring her homework. With her help, Qing Chen slowly leaned against the two pillows. He searched for the Morse code on phone and then drew the Morse code that the Kunlun member tapped last night with his memory. The index finger made short taps and the middle finger made long taps. Every set represented a letter or number. For example, index finger 1 tap and middle finger 1 tap would represent the letter A. This seemingly random rhythm was pieced together to make important information. Qin Chen didn't know why he suddenly wanted to decipher this Morse code. He just felt that he seemed to have missed an extremely important piece of the puzzle. This made rich people like Hu Xiaonyo sacrifice their lives to avenge the two Kunlun members. Qin Chen quickly recalled the rhythm of the tapping in his mind and deciphered it. He drew Morse code taps one by one on paper and then marked the translated letters right after. I have no regrets in this life. Brothers, take care. Tap tap tap, tap, tap. I repeat, I have no regrets in this life. Brothers, take care. This was a message from the injured Kunlun member to another fellow comrade. Sitting on the bed, Qin Chen suddenly thought that the moment the person got shot, he had already known he was going to risk it all. Looking at the clear blue sky outside the winder, he felt that the sky seemed to be closer now that he was on a mountain, making it look even wider. But for some reason, Qin Chen's mood was a little down. He folded the deciphered piece of paper and asked Li Tongyun to help him put it into his wallet. Chapter 95. Keywords you are listening at novelfull.audio. On the Laojun Mountain winding road, Zheng Yuandong was walking along the road slowly in a black Zhongshan suit. The bloody footprints on the ground guided him to replay the scenes of last night. There were 9 subsonic bullet casings scattered on the road and a bullet hole in the leader's ears. These all proved that both sides were in an intense shootout. Kunlun also collected 2 bloody bullet heads, and from the blood samples collected, they were from 2 different people. This meant that the masked man who killed the criminal was also injured. Zheng Yuandong stood where Qin Chen threw the rock and said to Lu Yuan, "He's wounded along the road," and found that he couldn't catch up to the criminal, so he crossed the forest and threw the giant rock from here. Lu Yuan frowned, then the rock hit the SUV. This accuracy is unbelievable. How can the path be predicted over 10 meters of drop? Yeah, compared to the ability to accurately penetrate the spleen, this was the killer's most powerful skill. Calculation. Zheng Yuandong said, "Are the DNA lab results out yet?" Lu Yuan shook his head, "The result is out, but there is no DNA sample from the same person in the DNA library. Check the similar ones, maybe you can find his relatives," Zheng Yuandong said. Yes, Lu Yuan nodded. This might take a bit longer, but the results should be available in 3 days at most. Zheng Yuandong said, "If you find the person to be polite, Kunlun needs this kind of person now, someone who can take on such challenges by himself." Qin Chen stayed on Laojun Mountain a little longer and wasn't in a rush to return to the city. He couldn't walk a long distance with these injuries on his feet, and Jiang Shui also wanted him to relax a little longer in this peaceful environment after the traumatizing event. As for tutoring lessons, Jiang Shui felt like it wasn't as important anymore after what happened that night. They should at least wait until Qin Chen had somewhat recovered. Jiang Shui reapplied some medication for Qin Chen. "If I knew you were going to get hurt like this, I would have bought some medicine from the inner world. The medicine from there heals much better than the ones from the outer world." "It's okay, Aunt Jiang Shui," Qin Chen smiled, "it doesn't hurt much now." By the way, Jiang Shui suddenly got worried. "You left so many bloody footprints on the scene. Someone must be able to find you through DNA comparison. Although your DNA has not been recorded, your father has been detained. Now, blood samples would be collected when detained." However, Qin Chen shook his head. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Jiang Shui glanced at Qin Chen and felt a little surprised. She realized that there seemed to be secrets that she wasn't aware of, but the young man in front of her didn't want to say more. In the whole incident, 2 key factors could have revealed Qin Chen's identity. One was Nan Gingchen, and the other was the blood sample. For Nan Gingchen, Qin Chen trusted that his friend wouldn't be an idiot. At least Nan Gingchen would mix in some misleading information for Kunlun. As for the next, Kunlun wouldn't be able to find any samples from him, because this involved some old events. Or else, Qin Chen wouldn't have dared to chase after people barefooted. Qin Chen said, "Aunt Jiang Shui, I want to be alone for a while. I have something to deal with." "Sure, I'll go take a walk with Xiao Yun. Call me if you need anything. We won't be too far away," Jiang Shui said. After Li Tongyun and Jiang Shui left the room, Qin Chen took out his phone and communication device. He first unlocked the communication device and it was flooded with Lu Dezhu's messages. "Boss, you're so awesome. You actually killed all the criminals. Boss, thank you for alerting me in time, thank you and your men for saving me. I, Lu Dezhu, will do anything for you. Boss, after tonight, I'll be loyal to you and only you. I'll do what others don't dare to do. As long as you need me to, I'll be your man even in the no man's land. Boss, why aren't you responding? Right, boss, we're back in Luo City. My classmates and I will visit Hu Xiaonyo and Zhang Tianjin together. I'll make sure to get the money from them for you." Qin Chen looked at the time. 9 in the morning. Countdown to 39.00.00. It has only been 9 hours since the last return. He hadn't had much time to rest before and after the transmigration, he didn't even have time to look at the countdown. He still has more than a day left. With the additional 2 or 7 days during transmigration, his injuries should recover by then. Qin Chen replied to Lu Dezhu's message, "Just woke up, wait until I find out what happened from my subordinates." Lu Dezhu sat up straight in awe from the message. The boss was sure confident, he was sleeping when all that was happening. He suddenly felt a great contrast between himself and the boss. From this, Lu Dezhu found a couple of details. First, boss didn't know that he was coming to Laojun Mountain and didn't know he came earlier than the original plan, because boss seemed to be very serious when giving him orders back in the inner world. So, he could rule out that boss was close to him. Boss was either an upperclassman or someone related to the school. Second, could the masked killer last night be the boss himself? Starting with personality, the killer had a fairly different personality from the boss. His impression of the boss has always been that of a strategist with a sinister character. Yes, very sinister. Last night, however, that killer was very bloody and straightforward when trying to avenge the Kunlun members. This seemed a bit different from his boss. All in all, Lu Dezhu temporarily determined that the masked killer last night wasn't the boss himself, though he couldn't be sure yet. If that was true, then the boss already got subordinates in the outer world. This was terrifyingly fast. At this moment, Qin Chen wasn't in a rush to reply to Lu Dezhu but was pretending to be understanding the situation and ignored Lu Dezhu for a while. When he opened his phone, he found that the class group chat had already exploded. Many classmates were saying that Lu Dezhu and his mysterious companions saved everyone. Although Lu Dezhu himself did not admit it, no one believed his denial. The class representative Yu Junyi recalled, at that time when the criminals hadn't even appeared, Lu Dezhu already noticed them from the inner world and told everyone to scatter, but we didn't believe him at that time. I thought he must be crazy. Well, now thinking about it, I feel ashamed of myself. A girl in the class said excitedly. The leader of the criminals pointed a gun at his head and asked where his companion was. Lu Dezhu was very determined to not disclose any information to the criminals even under the pressure. In fact, she didn't know that Lu Dezhu really didn't know where his mysterious boss and the mysterious subordinate were at that time either. He had nothing to say. Later, Bai Weiner talked about what happened in the group chat, which pushed the discussion to a climax. The criminals originally planned to take the 4 of them away in the chaos, but Lu Dezhu's men arrived in time. The masked man first secretly killed the gangster who escorted him and then killed the criminal who was escorting Lu Dezhu. She has been with Hu Xiaonyo and Zhang Tianjin during that time. Bai Weiner said that Hu Xiaoniu woke up in the middle of the night and kept mentioning that he would like to thank Lu Dezhu and his men. The person not only saved them but also avenged the two Kunlun members. Suddenly, when she mentioned the two Kunlun members who died, the group chat fell silent. Even though all of them were saved, now was not the time to express joy. Qin Chen suddenly thought that Hu Xiaoniu had a very good temperament. Now that Lu Dezhu was becoming famous, could he use Lu Dezhu to gather a group of reliable time travelers? Whether it was doing business with them or helping each other, perhaps more people would be useful. He closed WeChat and opened another app. In the early hours of last night, when the fires started to spread, the incident on Laojun Mountain had spread all over the country. Weibo, TikTok, and Bilibili, one Chinese version of YouTube, were full of videos and news of the fire in Laojun Mountain. But no one mentioned the details of what happened during the fire. The news was mainly about the aftermath. The only information was from a user with the ID of Kunlun, Lu Yuan, stating that all the arsonists were found dead, ending the series of time traveler kidnapping incidents. Until now, people finally understood that the arsonists were the culprits of the time traveler kidnappings that had been all over the news. There was no mention of how the criminals were killed nor of the masked man. That was mainly because Qin Chen hid his identity too well, and the few insiders who know about him wouldn't expose him on the internet. These people include Nan Gingchen, the mysterious girls in the parking lot, Li Tongyun, Jiang Shui. Today was the first day of the National Day holiday break, and after the incident, many people who planned on coming refunded their tickets. Many on the mountain didn't even watch the sunrise the next day and left the mountain by bus. It is said that the first bus in the morning was packed, and the transportation system of the tourist attraction was overwhelmed. Qin Chen reviewed what happened last night through his memory and confirmed that no one except Li Tongyun and Jiang Shui would know his real identity. He suddenly remembered something very important. Gold bars. Last night, during the chaos, Hu Xiaoniu once said something very important. Others may forget or ignore the intense situation at that time. But Qin Chen wouldn't. Gold bars were important keywords in his mind. Chapter 96. Lu Dezhu's Choice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the same time, Lu Dezhu was going to the Third People's Hospital of Luo City with his classmates. This was one of the best hospitals around. Last night, Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjin's wounds were briefly treated in a clinic before going to the hospital ER. After their injuries stabilized a little, they were sent to the city for further treatment. Right now, their condition just stabilized but was still in the ICU. It seemed that because they could afford it, all the medical devices they used were the best possible, and more than a dozen doctors were conducting expert consultations. It was so that these injuries wouldn't leave any after effects. Their parents had already flown over to Luo City on their private jets and were standing outside the ward right now. When Lu Dezhu and his classmates came to the ward, they saw 6 or 7 men in black suits standing outside the ward, each with transparent headsets hanging from their ears. These must be the bodyguards of those true bosses. A bodyguard stopped these students, and a middle-aged man looked at them. Who are you? Class leader of class 4 Xie Sun said, hello, we're Xiaoniu and Tianjin's classmates, and we're here to visit. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment. Excuse me, which one of you is Lu Dezhu? In the crowd, Lu Dezhu was also a little surprised. I am. The middle-aged man strode over and stretched out his right hand to Lu Dezhu. Thank you, classmate, for saving Xiaoniu. He told me everything after he woke up. If it wasn't because of you and your men, they would have been kidnapped or killed. Lu Dezhu was silent for a few seconds before reaching out to shake hands with the man and saying, I didn't really do much. It seemed that Hu Xiaoniu's injuries had stabilized, so the middle-aged man was relaxed a bit. He smiled as he said, it's good for young people to be humble, but it's not good to be too humble. In fact, this morning, Hu Xiaoniu had recovered a bit and was able to retell the story briefly. As a successful businessman, Hu Xiaonu's father didn't think time travelers were a big deal at first. Of the 7 bodyguards outside the door right now, one of them was a time traveler. This kind of person had a natural arrogance, and ordinary time travelers really couldn't threaten him to any extent. However, after Hu Xiaonu encountered the danger in City 7, his mindset changed. Because at that moment, he realized that his status and wealth in the outer world couldn't help his son much. He could buy certain items from the inner world with his wealth, but that didn't mean he could buy everything in the inner world with just money. That was always why he agreed to let Hu Xiaonu transfer to Luo City. The goal was to find a time traveler named Lu Dezhu. Moreover, Lu Dezhu, a time walker who always possessed extreme luck and avoided dangerous situations in advance, was different from the others. He could turn the tide for them in the future. Hu Xiaonu's father had a great sense of foresight. He knew that Lu Dezhu might not be very notable now, but he could see that Lu Dezhu was going places. This massive and impactful transmigration just started, so who could know for certain which person would have a bright future? A worthy investment. Of course, this might also be because the middle-aged businessman has never seen Lu Dezhu's reaction while facing the danger. If he did, he might have a different opinion. At least Lu Dezhu looked like a normal person at this moment. Hu Xiaonu's father thought for a while and said, "I talked to Xiaonu this morning, and I wanted to transfer him back to High City Middle School, but he refused. I thought, maybe he wanted to be closer to you, so I'm thinking that I can transfer you to High City as well. There, you'll have better resources and..." Rich people's approach was indeed unique. Others were hoping to get closer to Lu Dezhu, while Hu Xiaonu's father was getting Lu Dezhu closer to him. But Lu Dezhu quickly refused, "Sorry, but I'm not planning to go to High City yet. I've been living here ever since I'm born. My family and friends are all here." Hu Xiaonu's father said, "I can prepare you a house in High City. You can bring your family over, and I can give you a settlement fee." "There's no need for that," Lu Dezhu shook his head, "thank you for your kindness." At this time, Lu Dezhu had already weighed the pros and cons. A house in High City, a decent apartment in Shanghai, High City in this novel, at a good location is easily worth millions of dollars with a settlement fee was very tempting. But his boss was in Luo City. Others might think that he saved Hu Xiaonu, but the truth was that if it wasn't for his boss's men, he would have been long dead on the Laojun mountain. The criminals were planning to kill him, not to use him as a mule. That if he had a choice, he would rather be a mule. At first, he wanted to go to High City, but his boss wouldn't. In High City, if someone tried to kidnap him or wanted something he had, he would surely be dead. Also, Lu Dezhu realized the importance of improving his strength and combat power during the escape. Many time travelers said online that in the inner world, money couldn't buy you genetic injections. Most of the genetic injections in the black market were fake ones. That boss in a cat face mask was different. The one he got was genuine. The FDE genetic injection that he got still have 4 more injections, 004, 003, 002, and 001. His future was in his boss's hands. He wasn't expecting too much, but at least he wanted to finish the sequence of genetic injections and reach level B. He saw that even in the inner world, level B masters had considerable status. Level A masters were rare after all. At that time, getting a house in High City would be a piece of cake for him. Moreover, he took half of the double compensation that Hu Xiaonu gave him last time. This time, it would be even better if Hu Xiaonu could give more. Boss wouldn't know how much he actually got anyways. As the saying goes, investments should be made for the long term. Lu Dezhu felt that this business that he was in right now was worth more than a house in the long term. Besides, even if he went to High City, the boss would still use himself to do business, but what if another more capable person got spotted by the boss? Then all his effort would be wasted. As a dog who licks its owner's boots, it was only effective up close and useless from a distance. As he was thinking through this, Lu Dezhu felt a vibration from his communication device. He said to everyone, "Excuse me, I'm going to use the restroom real quick." He get into a stall and looked at Qin Chen's message. "I heard from my subordinate that Hu Xiaoniu paid double last time and he would do the same this time as well." Lu Dezhu, who was delighted just a second ago, was now in a cold sweat. He didn't even know that happened yesterday. "Brother Hu Xiaoniu, stop leaking business secrets." This was the second time now. The first time, he took a watch, and now, it was gold bars. Lu Dezhu didn't even dare to think about the punishment waiting for him when he get back into that prison. He replied dejectedly in the restroom, "Boss, I'll bring everything back next time." Outside the restroom, everyone was wondering why Lu Dezhu took so long. At this time, Lu Dezhu walked out. Hu Xiaoniu's father looked at him and said with a smile, "I've given it some thought. You're still young, so houses and stuff like that aren't appealing to you. How about this, tell me what you want, and I can do my best to arrange it for you." Lu Dezhu hesitated for a moment and said, "Uncle, you might not know, but I like to wish people an early new year as a hobby. Too, it's a tradition to give red envelopes containing money to those who give you good wishes during the Chinese New Year. So this is an indirect way of saying, I want your money." Chapter 97. Revenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. An early Happy New Year greeting. Hu Xiaoniu's father couldn't react for a while. He didn't even understand how their conversation took a sudden turn to this topic. The other students were also confused. The Lu Dezhu in front of them seemed to be a bit out of tune with his masterful image in their imagination. On the side, a student from class 3 whispered to the student committee member Yu Junyi, "Hey, do you think he has a system?" "System," pondered Yu Junyi. He didn't understand what his classmate meant. In their class, Yu Junyi had always been a diligent student who never played games or read novels, so he didn't even know what a system was. His classmate patiently explained, "Just like in web novels, a system will issue some random tasks to its host, and completing the tasks can make the host stronger." Ha! Yu Junyi was bewildered. The classmate continued talking, "But in those novels, usually only the protagonist has this kind of treatment. Is Lu Dezhu the protagonist of our world? Other than the system, there's no way to explain how he could be both so strong and so mentally challenged at the same time." In fact, this classmate's judgment was very accurate. From a certain point of view, Qin Chen was indeed Lu Dezhu's system. However, completing this task won't give Lu Dezhu any reward, it was purely a punishment for his greed. Because Hu Xiaoniu and Zhang Tianjin still needed plenty of rest, the students left after a brief visit. Once everyone left, Hu Xiaoniu's father turned around and re-entered the ward. Hu Xiaoniu opened his eyes and asked in a weak voice, "Dad, what do you think of Lu Dezhu?" "I can't be sure for now," Hu Xiaoniu's father shook his head. "We hadn't been through any crisis before, so I couldn't see this person clearly," Hu Xiaoniu spoke, "but this incident makes me feel like there's something amiss. He's managed to obtain a precious genetic medicine, so I can't exactly call him incompetent, but he really doesn't act like a capable person at all. Dad, can this kind of person truly catch Li Shudong's eye? There are two possibilities. Son, do you know how many incompetent eunuchs have there been in history? Wang Zhen, the head eunuch of the Ming dynasty, caused the downfall of Emperor Yingzong and ruined 3 elite Ming battalions almost single-handedly. How could such a man be able to own overwhelming power and influence? Perhaps he was good at licking people's boots, or perhaps his loyalty and devotion had been recognized by the emperor." Hu Xiaoniu's father said, "A wise leader is surrounded not only by top soldiers and great generals, but all kinds of people. Another possibility is that someone else is using him as a puppet, just like how some of our family's shares are held by another person." "Dad, which situation do you think is more likely?" asked Hu Xiaoniu. Hu Xiaoniu's father shook his head. "There's no need to make a conclusion so early, no matter which situation Lu Dezhu falls in, this is your opportunity. The family will give you our full support, so you don't have to worry about anything else. I know you envy your brother. He can start taking over some of the family business, but you're still young, you might not be able to do what he can do. And who knows, maybe your brother will be the one needing your help in the future. Hu Xiaoniu suddenly asked, "That's right, Dad, why did you tell me not to give him too many gold bars at once? He saved my life twice. Logically, even paying 100 gold bars is not too much." His father smiled. Let's assume Lu Dezhu is somebody else's puppet. The person using him must be very short of money now, otherwise, gold bars won't be the only remuneration he asks for. But if you pay him 100 gold bars in one go and he no longer lacks money, what else can you give him in the future? At that time, he won't be needing anything from you anymore. But what if someone else offers him a higher price? Hu Xiaoniu wondered. Then you have to befriend him before that can happen, answered his father profoundly. Understood. Hu Xiaoniu suddenly recalled, how about Wang Yun? Both of her legs were broken, so she was sent to the hospital for treatment. You haven't woken up at that time, and although Kunlun had some doubts, they didn't spare too much thought about it. This morning, her parents arrived in Luo City, paid off all the doctors and nurses on duty, and secretly took her away. Hu Xiaoniu's father added on, "It's not Kunlun's fault." Everyone knew there was something suspicious about her, but nobody expected her to play such grave a role in this matter. Hu Xiaoniu regained his consciousness early in the morning and immediately told his father about Wang Yun, but at that time she had already escaped with the help of her parents. But Bai Wana should have guessed that she's a traitor. Why didn't she say anything? Hu Xiaoniu was frowning. Maybe she can't bear to see her best friend go to jail. His father calmly said, "Xiaoniu, you have to remember that when someone becomes an enemy, any act of forgiveness is not kindness, but cowardice." "I will," replied Hu Xiaoniu. His father continued, "Nobody knows where Wang Yun has gone to hide. I haven't been able to find her as well. More importantly, the only surviving thug named Dongzi insists he doesn't know anything, and there's no evidence of the mutual connection between Wang Yun and the group of criminals. It seems like their communication is entirely dependent on another person hiding behind the scenes." Hu Xiaoniu thought it was strange. "There's something I'm doubtful about. The 4 thugs who kidnapped us that day were all arrested by Kunlun, so how did they manage to contact Wang Yun? But we're going to transmigrate again soon, I'll look for her in the inner world." His father glanced at him. "You want to seek revenge on Wang Yun?" Hu Xiaoniu fell silent for a while. "Can I?" The middle-aged businessman smiled. "Of course you can, but I want to know the reason you're so hell-bent on it. When he woke up this morning, Tianjin said that for the sake of revenge, you told the killer not to care about your survival and chase after the thugs. This isn't like you." He knew his son well. He possessed some cleverness and wisdom, but he had not yet experienced the harshness of society. There was integrity in his character, but he had not figured out what kind of person he wanted to be. However, Hu Xiaoniu said, "When I was a child, Grandpa always told brother and I stories of the time he fought in the war, of how his old commander heroically sacrificed himself in order to let other people retreat to safety. I'm a relatively selfish person, and perhaps it's also because the era of wars feels too distant. I always thought that Grandpa was exaggerating. But Dad, yesterday I finally understood, there really are people like that in this world. I may not be able to become that person, but I hope I can at least do something for them. Dad, yesterday, those 2 friends from Kunlun sacrificed their lives to open a lifeline for the students. Later, when the thugs took me away, I looked back and saw a smile of relief on his face. There was no trace of regret." Chapter 98. They must care a lot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was once again time for the time travelers to transmigrate. People were avidly discussing about the case. Some students had spilled the details of the incident, so the masked killer Qing Chen disguised himself had also entered everyone's radar. But they only knew about him wiping out the gang of thugs almost all by himself, that he was the one chasing after them to carry out revenge in the dark. They did not know who he was. Some said he was Liu Dezhu's subordinate, others said he just happened to pass by. There were all kinds of conjectures. The undisputed consensus was that another figure had been added to the list of the most famous time travelers in the country. And this person was as mysterious as he Xiao Xiao. Countdown 00.10.00. Japan, Osaka. Next to Shinsaibashi District, in the suite on the highest floor of St. Regis Hotel. A girl in light green shorts and a white T-shirt was huddled in a chair by the huge floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at her phone. News of the time traveler kidnapping case in Laojun Mountain had spread over there and caused a similar uproar. Currently, the number of crimes targeting time travelers had already climbed up to the hundreds. A lot of them were robbed of their mechanical limbs, and there were also those who were murdered by their friends immediately after bringing back medicine from the inner world. In an unexpected twist, the instances of crimes committed by friends and family were extremely high. At the start, everyone was worried about the threat of secret organizations from the dark web, but they had in fact underestimated the general public and overestimated the bonds of family and friendship. As Kamidai Sorain read up on everything, a sense of loss rose in her heart. She only wanted to do well in her job as an actress, just why was she suddenly plunged into this sort of complicated matter? It was making her feel very unsafe. In the outer world, she had to worry about others discovering her identity as a time traveler. In the inner world, she needed to be cautious in dealing with the Kamidai family to prevent them from unveiling her secret. A few days ago, the Kamidai family conducted a thorough internal investigation and horrendously tortured the 7 people who were found out to be time travelers. If the parents of Inner World's Kamidai Sorain hadn't been dead for a long time, if information about her hadn't been difficult to check because she was marginalized and had been living alone since young. If she hadn't sensed the impending danger and done a lot of preparation. If it weren't for her being of mixed Chinese and Japanese blood, if she hadn't been able to speak Chinese since she was a child. Then she too might have been discovered. The most crucial element in the investigation was the common language. Because Kamidai family had long been merged into the Federation, Chinese became their common language and only family members from the direct line still retained their mother tongue. They regarded this as the noblest tradition. The common language was used to communicate with outsiders, but Japanese was used for all the family records and rituals. Aside from her, none of the Japanese time travelers who transmigrated into the Kamidai family could speak Chinese. So they all died violent deaths. Because of her engagement, Kamidai Sorain was brought along to City 18 to meet a young man named Qin Chen. The Kamidai family didn't carry out a strict investigation on her because they were more concerned about the result and benefits of this political marriage. Thinking of the engagement, she typed out the name Qin Chen on the Chinese search engine app on her phone. But just like the previous attempts, she couldn't find any useful information. Seems like there's still no way to determine whether that boy is a time traveler. I didn't meet him the last time I came, I wonder if I'll be able to see him this time. If I keep on visiting, would he think that I've fallen for him? Then should I be more reserved and wait for a while before going again? But I think I'd have to follow those people back to the family soon. If I don't go now, it'll be difficult to meet him again. The girl's mind flickered and swayed in the sky of Osaka's night scene, vibrant as a nebula. Countdown to 0. The dark and fragmented world began to reassemble. Qin Chen returned to the dimly lit prison, groaning as he nearly fell to the floor. He was standing when he left, and upon coming back, the wounds on his feet instantly burst open. Fortunately, Qin Chen was mentally prepared and could remain standing. After steadying himself, he glanced at his arm. Countdown to return. 167.59.55, you're back. Looks like you got hurt pretty badly, Lin Xiaoxiao lightly said, but it's a good thing to be back. Yiwan smiled and nodded. It's alright as long as you're not dead. But it feels quite abrupt to see you so beat up when you were perfectly fine just a millisecond ago. Yiwan patted the chair in front of him as he spoke. Sit down and talk. Qin Chen laughed. Turned out Yiwan had expected his feet would be ruined and thus prepared the chair for him, just like he had long predicted that Qin Chen wouldn't be able to restrain his hot-bloodedness despite saying those people weren't worth risking his life for. Li Shutong's evaluation was very accurate. In the depth of his calm and powerful mind, there was indeed an unimaginable hot-bloodedness buried in it. Simultaneously contradictory yet harmonious. As if seeing through Qin Chen's thoughts, Li Shutong smiled and patted his shoulder. You're usually uncannily mature beyond your age, maybe the tormented life gives you has made you curb your youthful heart. But young people should be reckless. Once you reach my age, you'll realize that you've missed a lot of things if you don't do them while you're young. The youth was a time of passion and ignorance. At this age, perhaps you would make some or even a lot of mistakes. But the moment it ended, you would find that making mistakes was one of the reasons that made youth beautiful and brilliant. The youthful you were impulsive, rebellious, and fearless, but never regretful. After Qin Chen sat down, Yiwan asked him to take off his shoes and shirt. Let's check the extent of your injuries. Xiao Xiao has already prepared an ointment for you. Upon seeing the wounds on the soles of Qin Chen's feet and the bloody groove on his shoulder, they could basically picture what the boy had experienced in the past 2 days. The interwoven wounds on the soles of his feet spoke of the distance he had covered barefoot. The deep groove on his shoulder affirmed his battle with gun-loaded opponents. For an ordinary teenager, what he faced was considered extremely dangerous, but he managed to return safely. Lin Xiaoxiao told him, "Congratulations, you've passed the most difficult hurdle." By hurdle, he was referring to the first battle in one's life. A battle that would forever be engraved in your memory. People like them, who had plenty of experience, all knew that the first battle was very important as it could determine your future achievements. It wasn't about how much you could improve your strength, but more about your attitude in facing other enemies in the future. Would you back down? Or would you continue to fight with unparalleled courage and fervor? Strength determined the lower limit, while mentality determined the upper limit. Yiwan stared at Qin Chen's feet and emotionally sighed. Qin Chen, the treatment on your wounds is really scrupulous. Who did it? Since you were barefoot, there should be a lot of splinters embedded into your flesh and buried deep inside, so I thought I'd have to do it all over again. But now that I see it, the person who treated you had done a meticulous job. They must care a lot about you. Chapter 99. Punishment that must be accepted. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's a friend. I helped her a couple of times. Qin Chen was a little surprised by Jiang Shui's carefulness, even Mom Yi praised her. Yiwan didn't say much else and started applying ointment to him directly. Qin Chen only felt that his feet were hot and itchy. It was very painful. This was completely different from what he thought. He thought that the medication from the inner world would make him feel more comfortable. Lin Xiaoxiao said, "Hold it. This doesn't have any pain relief effect but is very good at promoting recovery. Of course, it's a price to pay for a faster recovery, everything comes at a cost." Li Shutong asked, "You mentioned that there were 5 thugs. How many did you kill?" Qin Chen answered, "I killed 6. Yiwan looked at Lin Xiaoxiao, "Hand over the money." "He killed more than 4. Lin Xiaoxiao said unwillingly, "Hey kid, you're a bit too cruel. Wait, if there's only 5, how did you kill 6? Did you kill a classmate as a sacrifice?" Qin Chen. "No. More thugs showed up than expected. There was a total of 8. "I see." At this time, Qin Chen, who had become accustomed to these two betting against himself. He asked curiously, "How many did you bet that I can kill?" 3. "I feel like it'll be incredible enough for you to kill 3. This was your first time after all." Lin Xiaoxiao sighed, "Did you not hesitate at all before killing someone?" As the question was asked, Li Shutong suddenly started at Qin Chen seriously. The teenager waited for a moment before answering, although it would make me seem indecisive to say this when I killed the first one and felt the blood on my hands, I indeed hesitated and was even a little scared. I wanted to escape from there. Li Shutong smiled and said, "This is a natural reaction. If you didn't hesitate at all, then I should be the one regretting instead. I taught you how to face the world fiercely, but you should always be in awe of life." "Yes, teacher. I understand, and I know what you mean," answered Qin Chen. "Do you have any priorities this time?" asked Li Shutong. "As your teacher, I can deal with some of them for you." "I do have two things," said Qin Chen. "Let me settle the first one right now." As he confirmed that the medication had been applied, he put his shoes back on in pain and walked toward the confinement room. At first, his walking posture was a little awkward, but as he walked, he forced himself to walk normally. Lin Xiaoxiao laughed, "This kid is so cruel even to himself. But the crueler he is to himself, the crueler he would be to enemies. That's a good thing." Qin Chen put on the mysterious cat mask again. The moment the confinement room door was opened, Lu Dezhu obediently presented 3 gold bars, and he behaved very well. Qin Chen, however, didn't go get the gold bars but asked calmly, "Tell me what you have done wrong." "I shouldn't have ignored the communication device," said Lu Dezhu with his eyes lowered. "I shouldn't have run away by myself, and I shouldn't have embezzled the gold bars." Qin Chen sneered quietly behind the mask and asked, "I know Kun Luan had met with you alone. Tell me what you have talked about with them." Lu Dezhu pondered what the boss's identity in the outer world was. How come he even knew what Kun Luan was up to? At this time, he also had some new speculations. Could it be that the boss has many underlings, like the killer on Laojun Mountain? Could it be that an underling reported to his boss about the watch? Very likely. This assumption also confirmed his feeling that boss didn't seem like a high schooler. High schoolers should be like him. Scared when facing danger, and escape when being threatened. No one experienced this before, and even Hu Xiaonyo was also terrified that night. To be precise, Lu Dezhu felt that there should be no high school students like Qin Chen who could hide behind the scenes and strategize. In fact, Qin Chen didn't know that Kun Luan had looked for Lu Dezhu. He just guessed that Kun Luan would definitely look for him. At this time, Lu Dezhu said, "They asked me if I know your underling, and I didn't answer. They told me that they didn't have any bad intentions, and they just found a phone at the scene. It seems that the leader of the thugs received a mysterious call before he died. The caller's information could not be found." While speaking, Lu Dezhu's eyes glanced at Qin Chen's feet. Kun Luan also told him about the bloody footprints that were found, and that the killer's feet must have been seriously injured. But he found that the boss walked without any abnormality. Looks like his boss wasn't the one on Laojun Mountain that day. Moreover, his boss did have such a vicious underling. "Why did they ask about a call picked up by the thugs?" asked Qin Chen. "Oh, they said the fingerprints on there were misleading. Normally, a phone would have hundreds of fingerprints, but that one only has a dozen," said Lu Dezhu. "They thought that the killer picked up that call. Generally speaking, a normal phone would be held in the hand frequently, and countless fingerprints should be on it. But at that time Qin Chen was on the verge of fainting, and he didn't have time to make so many fingerprints. Sure enough, those smart people in Kun Luan could easily see through his little tricks." Lu Dezhu said, "Kun Luan just wanted to ask him what was said through the call and who the person was. Barbecue, they believe that it was that person behind the phone who caused Wang Yun to turn against us. This might happen again if it wasn't dealt with properly, and the situation would escalate quickly." He then said, "Boss, can you ask your underling and I can relay the contents of the call?" Qin Chen didn't continue this topic and said, "Anything else?" At this time, Qin Chen felt that it was difficult for him to get any more useful information from Lu Dezhu. Lu Dezhu was a little stunned and burst into tears. "Boss, are you asking me for my last words?" Qin Chen asked, why should I keep you alive? You think you still got any more value left in yourself? As he spoke, Lu Dezhu knelt down to Qin Chen and said, Boss, I brought all the gold bars back, and I promise I'll do my absolute best from now on. Please don't kill me. I'm still useful to you. I can attract all the time travelers in this nation for you, and I'll be your puppet. Lu Dezhu knew very well that even if his boss killed him at this time, his boss would not bear any legal responsibility. No one in the world would know how he died. Qin Chen got up and said, It's too late for you to say this now. Remember, if you do something wrong, you will definitely pay the price. Although you are only a sophomore in high school and you have never experienced the cruelty of society, you have to know some rules, now that you're in the game. Then, he got up and asked out. In the silence, Lin Xiaoxiao and Yuan walked into the confinement room and brought Lu Dezhu to the darkroom that Qin Chen was in. Of course, Qin Chen was bluffing. Lu Dezhu couldn't die yet, but he had to take the punishments. Many thanks to Christopher Zheng for supporting us on Patreon. Join today to read 10 advanced chapters for Knight's Nomenclature.